This is the law of attraction. This is how the law of attraction works. If this is your filter, and she called it your stinking thinking, love that, then that's the way you're going to view the world. And that transformed me. I'll never forget singing as a Catholic in this place 20-some years ago called Key to Life, and Marion was talking about all of these spiritual principles, and I couldn't hold back the tears. I thought it can't be this simple. It just simply can't be this simple. She would talk about how you have this, you can change that slide inside of you, and you can project how it is that you want to view people, even if they're challenging to you, because you don't have an attachment to them anymore if you change your perspective, okay? She says that if you're in a situation where you know from past experience you're going to be confronted in some way, there will be a certain behavior that you don't like. This is just not during the holidays. This is all the time. You can actually, and you probably have your own form of this, but you like psychologically visualize, she says, pour pink syrup over somebody. Have you ever tried that? In other words, you're taking a deep breath, essentially. And you're just putting that white light, pink syrup, whatever you want to call it, over that person in that situation, so that this higher consciousness that you've been trying to work on actually has a purpose and a time to be created. So you're in this situation and it feels different. You go home and you go, wow, I tried that. And it's different this time. And what that does for me is if I'm trying to really draw, no matter how tired I am on the patients, I might get really quiet, which is not me, but if I'm drawing on this, then I can see that I'm giving myself those opportunities to create some of those spiritual principles within the moment, okay? Doing, being. Eckhart Tolle, huge teacher in this. How many of you read his stuff? Yeah. He has really been instrumental in changing people's lives. Deepak Chopra is another one. Wayne Dyer is another one. You know, it depends on where your consciousness is at and what spiritual book author you can relate to. I know that for me when I was studying all these, I became like I would have stacks on my desk at CCO where they knew that I loved to interview spiritual book authors. They knew it, meaning the publicists. And I was there long enough to realize that these brilliant people were all saying the same thing. If you have 12 principles, if you have 7 principles, it's all about how we can change from within, which changes our outer world. And there are rules, there's principles, there's all of these things and all of these reasons why we are here in a setting like this today. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is during this holiday time, if you have not been raised in the Christian faith, or if you have had not the greatest understanding about this whole Christmas principle, what does it mean? Like Mary's going to be on a donkey, 9 months pregnant, going 200 miles? I doubt it. You know, come on. What does this symbolically all mean? And as a Catholic, of course, it was adorning, and I love it all. I love it all. You could not take that girl out of me, and I embrace it. My grandchildren are into it now. But there is this great metaphysical way to look at everything that's happening during Christmas and all of the different parts of Jesus' birth. Have you guys heard this yet? Charles Fillmore wrote about it, and many other people have too. And I thought it would be really interesting to talk about that just a little bit today, and the symbolism of a lot of the different things about Jesus' birth and why it has become so important for 2,000 years. Like we're honoring this baby's birth. Really? Yes, we are. But what else are we honoring? And what I want to do is talk a little bit. I'm so used to a music stand where I can cheat, you know, look down. This metaphysical interpretation of what the birth of Jesus is about. And it will come full circle into creating the sacred during this time, okay? And this metaphysical aspect of the birth of Jesus is, of course, the very pregnant Mary. And the very pregnant Mary is the symbol of pure divine love, of intuition. Pregnancy is about the birth that is about to happen. This birth of this Christ child, Jesus, of course, but Christ child, Christ consciousness. Then you have the male, which is Joseph, and he wasn't really into all of, I guess that he was very surprised when he found out he was going to be a father. But he was that fatherly role to Jesus, but he represents, of course, the male to Mary's female, and the feminine, I should say. And then it's just this, it's not only this religious celebration, it's this metaphysical, inspirational time here. When you hear about the inn, so they rode on the donkey and they went forever. There was no room at the inn, and the inn, metaphysically, is our intellect, and our intellect is what sometimes, often, can block out this divine intuition, which helps us achieve this higher consciousness. Okay, there's no room at the inn. Okay. So that means that meant that there is no room for the spiritual side of our consciousness. And then there's the manger in this stable. They find their way to the stable. And they say Jesus is born and laid in a manger. And the manger represents our heart, not just our consciousness, but our heart. Regardless of what we're going through, that this Christ consciousness, represented by Jesus' birth, can be born in all of us. Let's see. Ooh, Mary also, the virgin awareness of pure intuition. And the intuition is what gets us to these different levels of consciousness when we go within. It is through Mary that Jesus is born, and you can continue on by knowing that this is the Christ in all of us. It gives us this opportunity to celebrate us during this time. And to continue on, the angels show up and they bring messages. I bring you good tidings. Well, the angels show up and they are divine inspirations, and they say, I bring you good news of great joy. In other words, as you're going within and you are recognizing this Christ consciousness that continues to grow with you every month, every day, every year, you are getting messages of great joy. The intellect is going, you're giving yourself that permission to have the divine consciousness come in through you. And then you look at the star, and the star represents this possibility of our own Christhood, this own consciousness. And when you see that star, in order to recognize it and to see its brilliance, you have to continue a state of being, going within, to acknowledge that divine intuition that is yours. The shepherds, of course, they represent a scene, which is the scene of where we are at emotionally and intellectually. Okay? And sometimes we can let our minds and our thoughts stop our own growth and our own progress. And the shepherds just make sure that the scene is there for you in a state in which you can manifest these callings that you're getting to increase your Christ consciousness. Now then, you talk about, well, where's Herod in all of this? And Herod represents the ego. And if the ego gets involved, that stops you from wanting to hear this expansion, to experience this expansion. And you don't really need to get rid of the ego. And I remember when I was first in this women's group called After Eve, and we were talking about the ego. And at that point in my reading, I was thinking, well, you can't have an ego. You shouldn't have an ego. And one gal said, no, the ego is okay. It gives you your personality. But don't let it take over, because it can keep you away from your own highest good. So if you get it to just move out of the way a little bit, to not kill it, you can work on your Christ consciousness. And then the wise men came out of the east, and if you think about this, east is the direction of the rising sun, which represents the growth of consciousness. And then they came bearing gifts, right? So gold. Gold means our material possessions. And if you look at it through the years, it hasn't been actually in the form of money, it has been in trade. It's the way in which we are working out our divine plan, okay? And then frankincense. Have you ever smelled frankincense? Yeah, it's pretty strong. I have brought it to some passings of some relatives, as a matter of fact, and anointed them. It's a symbol of prayer, and we send it up toward all of the aspirations of our increased consciousness. And then there's myrrh. Myrrh is wonderful, if you've smelled that, and it is an embalming oil, it's said. So this embalming oil actually helps to symbolically help you let go of what isn't working for you anymore, okay? So, this birth didn't only happen about 2,000 years ago. It happens every year. And we have this opportunity to take this crazy time, and I say crazy time because I feel like I'm living it. Wait, you're laughing. I have a relative in the audience. I just want to make sure. Oh, yes. And you wonder what the pregnant piece. Well, pregnancy is us. And this ability to give birth to us and our own consciousness by going within and by having that opportunity to recognize the Christ within us. Yes, we're celebrating Jesus. A lot of us Christians are. But we get to celebrate year after year this opportunity that we have as spiritual beings living out a human experience, how we can increase that awareness that we have, this Christ consciousness, this consciousness in general. And you've heard the expression Christ consciousness, right? It isn't Jesus' last name, by the way. I don't know about you, but that's what we thought as Catholics. It was Jesus Christ. Christ was his last name. And so you'll see people go, what? Christ, well, wait a minute, I thought you were spiritual. No. It's a consciousness within you, within all of us, that we have that choice to grow, elevate. And the best way we can do that is by going within, or doing whatever form of meditation is good for you. Sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's martial arts, right? And what it does for me, I know, when I take that time, is that it brings to me a peace in this scary, crazy time that really is very sacred time. Because if you look at it, a week later is this new year. You have 2 times in your life when the energy is really with you, that if you want to make changes, you can really utilize that energy. And that is at your birthday and the first of the year.